Breaking news just minutes ago, former FBI Director James Comey entered a not guilty plea to federal charges. He is accused of lying to Congress and obstructing a proceeding related to the FBI's investigation of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Comey was charged just days after President Trump publicly called on the Justice Department to prosecute him and other political rivals. Back with us is CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez and CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. But first, I want to go to crime and justice correspondent Caitlin Polans. You were inside that courtroom. Take us inside the hearing, Caitlin.
Well, Pam and Wolf, we had Jim Comey sitting in the middle of his two lawyers on one side and Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney, sitting at counsel's table in the middle of two line attorneys from the Justice Department in the courtroom. You don't often see that. The U.S. attorney herself in the courtroom looking at the judge, shaking her head yes every time the judge was asking questions of the government. And actually, the way that the judge spoke to the government is something that you don't see very often in a case like this either. We did get a trial date. That trial date is going to be January 5th, so that's less than 3 months from today. That's very fast, and the judge made clear he thinks that there will be no delays and that if there needs to be a resolution, even if the government thinks there's classified information in this case, he will resolve it quickly. Some quotes from Judge Michael Nachmanoff: there should be no reason this case gets off track because of the existence of classified information. He also said that it doesn't appear to be an overly complicated case at this time. And then the other thing, Evan, Pam, Wolf, is that Comey's own counsel is saying, let's get it moving. We haven't seen any discovery at all. No evidence yet here. We're ready to go to trial. Let's move it fast. And the prosecutor, when he came up to the judge to speak, not Halligan, a line prosecutor, he said, well, we're still going through classified information and discovery ourselves.
Well, this was a hearing that lasted about 25 minutes. This is a very fast hearing. It was very perfunctory. And one of the things we were waiting for, Caitlin, was the motions that were suggested by the defense that they were going to present to the judge. These are challenges, essentially, to have the case, these charges tossed out. And one of the ones we were waiting for was the selective and vindictive prosecution, and also possibly the appointment of Lindsay Halligan. You'll remember that before this case was brought, the president fired the U.S. attorney, his own appointee, in this office, in part because there was some resistance inside this office to bringing this case, and then he appointed Halligan. And so the question has been whether Halligan is legally appointed because the previous occupant of the office had served the 120 days, which was the limit that he is allowed to serve. So the question is whether the judge will hear that. What did you hear in court?
Yes, so the judge did set a date to hear arguments on that. It's going to be in November. That's whenever the meaty arguments will be in this case, where Comey's team will try and attack the prosecution themselves, saying that it's been vindictive, it's been selective, the case should be thrown out, and that Lindsay Halligan shouldn't have a role to play. There's also going to be a separate set of arguments, a separate set of motions from the defense, another round of attempts for them to get the case dismissed or cut back. And those, Comey's attorney Pat Fitzgerald indicated, they're going to be just as much of an attack of the process of the Justice Department.
Pat Fitzgerald saying something about that there was outrageous government misconduct in this case. Again, referring to the president. We've talked so much about how this extraordinary role that President Trump has played in this case, not only posting those social media posts calling for the case to be brought, but of course repeatedly commenting, something that is very unusual in these cases, and clearly it's going to play a big role in this trial going forward.
And Evan, it's now before the judge on the record. Pat Fitzgerald standing at the podium, you'll see in the court transcript, says, our view is the prosecution was brought at the direction of President Trump.
Back to you, Pam and Wolf.
All right, I want to just quickly ask Caitlin, I take it that the judge did not ask for Comey to be detained while he awaits trial. Is that right?
That's correct. So he's being released just on his signature alone. That's a personal recognizance bond. He was never under arrest. He was summoned to come to court today, and that's how it'll work going on from here. He's being ordered by the judge. You've got to come back for all of these additional appearances, and right now there's only 2 other hearings on the calendar at this time. One in November, one in December for the government to argue everything to try and get this case tossed. We'll get the rulings in writing from the judge, and then there's a trial date, which they say it'll only take 2 to 3 days to get this through a trial. And this is a court that moves fast.
Caitlin, very quickly, if he's convicted on these 2 felony charges, how much time in jail potentially could Comey face?
Well, the maximum for these 2 counts that he faces, it's a 5-year maximum prison sentence. That is extremely unlikely. Essentially, no one gets that. And Comey would be, if he were to be convicted, a first-time offender. There's also a fine that would come with a sentence, but there's a lot of different options, and probation would always be one. We often are not talking about custodial sentences when it comes to something like this, a false statement charge.
All right,
Certainly
Caitlin, thank you very
here
much.
in court here, Wolf and Pamela.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so much about this that's unusual. I'm going to bring in Ellie now to talk about that and pick apart a little bit about what you all reported. I mean, so first you have the Comey team putting out mid-January for a trial date, and that was fast. Like, wow, that's really fast timeline. Then you have the judge saying, actually, let's do even earlier in January. And then you have the judge predicting it'll be just 2 to 3 days.
Okay, a couple remarkable developments here. This trial is going to happen head-spinningly fast. It is 89 days from today, and this is the opposite of the normal dynamic. Usually, defense lawyers want more time. They want more time to prepare. They're not available. Sometimes they want to drag it out for strategic purposes, as we saw with Donald Trump and his prosecutions, for example. Once in a rare while, and we saw this today, you will see a defendant go into court and say, I want my speedy trial rights. I want them now, or as soon as possible. And here we go. We're going to have a trial January 5th. I'm actually, even though this federal district, the Eastern District of Virginia, is known for moving cases quickly, I'm astonished at how quickly this is really going to go. Their typical case takes 7-8 months, and here we're talking about just under 3.
And what about the 2 to 3 day timeline?
My gosh. Very interesting development. So, first of all, prosecutors generally, federal prosecutors, have a bad habit of over-trying their cases, of spending way too long, of putting in too much extraneous detail. So this tells me 2 things. 1, prosecutors understand they need to be focused here. But 2, the case itself is quite narrow. It really gets back to whether Jim Comey lied when he testified to the Senate that he had not authorized an FBI leak. We talked about this before. We know, we believe who the alleged leaker is, this guy Daniel Richman. We know that the leaks allegedly were about Hillary Clinton's possession of an email server, but 2 to 3 days is a very short trial, and I think the parties would be well served to stick to that and not drag it out. But look, there's a chance that the government could have gone in there today and prosecutors said, we need 3 weeks to try our case. The fact that it's 2 to 3 days shows that this is extremely narrow. It's based on one piece of testimony about one fact.
The judge made it clear that he does not want the parties to slow walk the fact-finding process leading up to the trial.
Yeah, so the judge, what he was doing there, Wolf, was anticipating the types of delays that emerge. He didn't want the parties coming back in 3 weeks, and the defense saying the prosecution hasn't given us the discovery, has not given us the information we're entitled to. He also, the judge made a point of saying, I don't think that there's security issues about classified documents because sometimes that can slow cases down. So the judge was signaling this is not what we would call just a hold date or a temporary date, January 5th. This is a hard date, and he was anticipating today some of the speed bumps and saying, we're not doing that. Everyone's going to be on point here. Prosecutors, you're going to turn over the documents you have to. You're going to do it promptly. We're not going to get sidetracked.
And it is notable because when you look back at all the Trump cases, his team was trying to slow roll it, right?
Yeah.
For their own purposes. In this case, Comey's team wants to speed it up.
Important point. We talk about the speedy trial right. That is a constitutional right that belongs to the defendant. And so Donald Trump and many other defendants say, fine, but I don't want a speedy trial. I want a slower trial. Comey wants a speedy trial. Maybe that tells you something about his level of confidence.
He seems to be pretty confident. We'll see what happens. Ellie, thank you very, very much.